Everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing our jungle tier list for patch 10.10. So as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton. Come by, check out the stream. It's on YouTube every night starting around 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'd love to have you. Very chill, friendly community. I try to be as conversational as I can be while I'm playing, answering any questions that you have, sharing some old man stories, explaining what's going on in the game and some of the decisions I'm making and that other people are making. So be sure to check it out. It's a great time. And if you do enjoy this content, check out the rest of the content as well. I've already released a patch notes video and a support tier list video for this patch. And then there's constantly new content coming out. So be sure to check out all that. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Daughter just now started yelling at me a lot as soon as I start recording over there, of course. Hopefully y'all don't hear too much of that background noise. My wife's tiling the hallway listening to Star Trek on her phone, and then my daughter's listening to these nursery rhymes on her phone. But I tested it out. I don't think the mic was picking up most of that. So it's a little flavor. There's a little family flavor. Okay, but let's go ahead and get in here. Let's get started. Okay, so the tier list has shuffled up a little bit because, I've been playing jungle now for probably about 3 or 4 weeks, just really trying to learn it, sort of slogging my way through gold. We are still Diamond 4, of course, on the support account, but I've had a lot of fun kind of learning jungle. I think it's making me a more well-rounded player. But the jungle list is shifting around as I come to understand and appreciate different aspects of the jungle a little bit more. So, Nunu, I think, is the top overall pick right now, and I've been playing Nunu a lot lately. I've always been a fan of Nunu in the jungle since his rework, or shortly after his rework, I guess. I was kind of skeptical about him, but then after playing him a bit, I'm like, yeah, he's really good. So let's go over what is it about Nunu that's really good. And this Google Doc will be in the description, by the way. I'll also have timestamps if you want to jump around your favorite parts. You can also speed it up to like 1.5 speed and probably understand most of what I'm saying if you're kind of pressed for time. And then within this Google Doc, I'll have a little mini Google Doc that gives a 1 to 5 rating system. 1 being the champion is one of the worst at that role, at whatever that task is, and then 5 being the champion is one of the best at that task. So we have clear, how fast do they clear, how safe do they clear early game, but also as the game goes on. Ganks is how well does the champion gank, are they able to get around vision, do they have lots of CC, do they have lots of damage, what's the probability that if you go to a lane it's going to be successful, you're going to get at least a flash, and you're not going to be giving up that much to do it, right? Dueling, how well does the jungler do fighting the other jungler primarily? So if you get invaded or you choose to invade the enemy jungle, how well can they fight, especially like in the first 3 levels or so? Can you fight them for scuttle by yourself? Can you fight them over a buff by yourself if you have to? Scaling is how well does the champion perform over time. So part of this can be damage, but part of it could also just be the team utility that they bring in. What do you want, Ray? Part of it could also just be like utility. Do they have a lot of CC? Do they have different buffs or debuffs that they bring to your team? What is it, Ray? Rory, no, you gotta sit. Daddy's working. You gotta sit over there if you want to bring the song over here, okay? So how well does the champion perform over time? And then reliability is how well can someone with a moderate amount of experience, or how likely is it that they can perform well over many games, right? So just, is it just reliable, right? So is it like hard to play? How many ways can you mess it up? How much counterplay is there to the enemy? How well does your champion perform relative to other champions in the meta? Do you have good matchups? So that's just where I put it there, 4 or 5. It's almost like you can think of that as like, how confident can you be blind picking this champion and expect to do reasonably well with a moderate amount of practice. So not one tricks, not easily countered, pretty good in a lot of situations. Okay, and then recommended rooms, recommended items. Okay, so let's talk about Nunu here real quick. So I had him a little bit lower last time. I think I had him like tier 2. But after playing him a little bit more, I do think that he is number 1 overall. I've been doing very well on Nunu, and a lot of it has just been appreciating his gank value a lot more, particularly if you have a shrine active. His ganks are insane, because whenever you start the snowball roll, your W, it checks your movement speed at the time that you start the roll, and it uses that movement speed as the modifier for the roll for the entire roll. So if you start on a speed shrine, and then you start rolling with this, that it's going to act like you have that million movement speed for the entire roll, and that allows you to charge up the snowball to full power faster, and you could just come flying in so fast. It's so hard for the enemy to dodge this a lot of times, and if you get the correct angle, oftentimes it's going to be difficult for them to flash it. Now they can flash it in some cases, but it's tough, and it does force an early flash. And the thing is, you can even come up. You can't do the shrine and roll up a lane, but you know, sometimes if a lot of the stuff's warded, you could even roll up the lane if your lane has a lot of CC. If you're like ganking for a Leona lane bot lane or a Nautilus lane bot lane or something, sometimes you can just roll straight up the lane and get people. So it both gives you a huge movement speed boost as you're coming in and a really big hitbox on a very nice piece of CC that does quite a bit of damage too. You should only get like 1 point in this, but it's still 180 damage for 1 point with 150% AP ratio. You don't build a lot of AP on him, but still, that's a lot of damage. So it's very, very powerful. And then even if they do flash the roll, you have the Snowball Barrage. And this is the other thing that just makes him so insane on ganks. Because you can throw this 3 times and it slows people for up to 1 second 3 times. So that's basically 3 seconds of slow, and then if you get close enough to root somebody, it's going to root them for about a, you know, half a second to 1 second a lot of the time. And so a 3 second slow with that on top of it, and the fact this is what you level up second, your overall damage ends up being very high, right? So if you hit them with all 9 snowballs, that's going to be like 432 damage. So that's very, very good. Now, it doesn't have very good AP scaling, but you're not building a lot of AP on him. And then if you hit him with this does the this does 80% AP, so that is pretty good on the root. So he's just got a lot of tools in his kit. You know, you roll up. If they flash the snowball, great. You can still try to get them with the snowball barrage if they don't have any other escapes. You have your consume also on ganks, which has a pretty good amount of damage. I mean, at level 5, it's 150% or 140 flat, and then 5% of your bonus health. Obviously, heals you back for a ton as well. So the ganking is pretty good. That's what I'm appreciating a bit more. But there's just everything about his kit is just really solid. You can use that snowball later, not just for ganks, but also for engaging into fights if you want to. It's good just for rotating around the map, just for getting the situations faster. Whether that's just coming back from base, whether that's rotating between lanes. Maybe you had to split push a side lane really quick and clean it up because your team's about to contest a dragon or something. So it's just very, very good. It's just good movement, you know, good gank pressure, pretty good damage. Just a CC machine with the snowball, with his snowball barrage, with absolute 0. Brings lots of slows to fight. And he's just surprisingly, like, really tanky as well. I mean, his base stats are already... They're not, like, ultra high. I mean, at 570 and 32, they've been nerfed a little bit over time. But they're still pretty solid. 345 base movement speed. And every time you chomp somebody, especially later on in the game, base healing. Sorry, honey. It's still pretty good. Like, this is what you max first, and it's going to be 12% of your bonus health. So, you know, if you have, like, 1,000 bonus health, that's 120 extra, and then 84% of your bonus AP. And if you're below 50% health, you get an extra 50%. Well, actually, that is the empowered, so it's quite a bit of damage. And then it just keeps you really safe when you're going through the jungle, too, so you're almost always full health. So if they invade you, it's really annoying, but it's unlikely you're going to die in a lot of scenarios just because you're going to be so high on health. And you can fight over buffs, right? If they're trying to invade and fight you for, like, red buff or blue buff, and you have a smite ready... You have a smite ready, you can take buffs, you can take scuttles from people, and one of the best things, especially if you're playing at gold and lower, is you're pretty much guaranteed to get dragon or baron. I have lost like 1 baron that I can remember off of a smite consume, and that's because like a brand passive blew up, like the 3-hit passive blew up at like the same time that Vayne like procced her 3rd silver bolt, and just like all of this crazy stuff just spiked at the same time. But most of the time, it's going to be extremely difficult to lose this unless you're up against something like a Cho'Gath. If they CC you, no, Rory, we can't do that. Daddy's working right now, okay? You got to go over and watch the phone on the chair, okay? No, we can hang out in a little bit, okay? But anyways, yeah, so great for fighting over buffs. You know, great for taking those, you know, dragons or barons that otherwise might be 50-50, could be spooky. You're going to get it. Unless they CC you and stop you from casting Consume, then you're going to be able to outsmite pretty much anybody the vast majority of the time. You just start the Consume first. It'll start the animation. Okay, thank you. You going to go in there and watch TV? Are you going to go play with Mommy? So yeah, it's just, and that's so important in gold because a lot of times people just won't like zone off the enemy jungler a lot of times, and you can just force fights. Like you can force the issue around Baron if your team's ahead and just help snowball the game even harder. Because like they have to come contest you for Baron. They're not going to be able to win the smite fight. They can't just like try to suicide in there and you know get a Baron steal. So that's just really powerful. Okay, Mommy's got the big po. You gotta ask Mommy for it, okay? Daddy's working. It's too quiet. Okay, do you want this one back? Okay, well go talk to Mommy if you want the big one, okay? Go talk to Mommy. Can you get around in the room? Lock yourself in. Okay, can you give her the big po? I'm trying to record something. Okay. Sorry about that. Alright. But anyway, so very good clearing in the jungle. It's fast. You can come in fast with ganks. You can take dragons quickly by yourself or with other people. It's pretty much guaranteed you're going to get every dragon or baron that you fight over unless they CC you at the exact right moment. And then his ultimate does a lot of damage. I mean, 625 at level 6 max damage. That's over half of the health of a lot of people. And it gives you a big shield, so it's plus 30% of your bonus health. Do what? Oh. So if you have 1,000 health, that's another 300 shield, which is really good. So, it's just very strong. And on top of all that, he gives out a nice little buff that scales pretty well with your AD carry usually. You get 20% attack speed and 10% bonus movement speed. And you get some splash damage. Which really helps out early on with raptors and wolves and things like that. The biggest snowball does a lot of damage to them, and you have the passive, which does a lot of damage. So you can actually clear those raptors super fast. So yeah, all of this just positions him, makes him really strong. Very disruptive tank later on. He can actually solo quite a few champs if you get ahead, just because his base damages are so high. I mean, this snowball thing we talked about before, it's like over 400 damage once you get that leveled up. The chomp is a great trade. It does good damage, like 220 with health modifier and an AP modifier, and it heals you for a lot. It's on a pretty short cooldown of 8 seconds. So he's just kind of got it all, and if they don't have their flash up, and they try to fight you the absolute zero with all this stuff, you're just going to blow people up. So super, super strong. Now, I recommend Aftershock, Font of Life, Conditioning, and Revitalize. If they just have a ton of CC, they have like Vagar, Morgana, just a bunch of nasty CC champs, then you might consider taking Unflinching. That's really underrated. Like, Revitalize is good. It does give you up to 15% extra healing on your consume, and also affects your ult, the shield on your ult. So it is nice, but I think sometimes people overvalue Revitalize just a little bit. If you are taking Ravenous Hunter, Revitalize becomes a little bit better. That does help with your Hunter healing. Sorry, I got like a cat hair in my mouth or something. What that is. But it is pretty good. But yeah, if you just need to go like Code Red, they just have a billion CC. You can go Unflinching plus Legend Tenacity and then get Mercury Treads. Now, keep in mind that you cannot lower the duration of CC below 0.5 seconds. So if it's a whole lot of little just small stuns, like Nautilus comes to mind, has a whole bunch of little chip stuns with like his passive, his hook, stuff like that. Even Leona, sort of a bunch of smaller stuns, it's not going to be as good. It's okay, but you really like want it for those big stuns, like those 2 to 3 second stuns, the Ash Arrows, the Morg Binds, the Lux Binds, Fiddlesticks Fears, Lulu Polymorphs, stuff like that. Vagar Cages. He's naturally pretty good against CC just because he's tanky anyways, so you can just absorb a lot of the CC for your team and just kind of heal through it, but that is an option. And then I like taking Cheap Shot Ravenous Hunter unless they're overloaded with CC. Cheap Shot is just actually a fantastic rune on Nunu because he has 3 different abilities that apply slows. It's great for Cheap Shot, and then it just adds a little bit of extra damage during the laning phase. And because he can kind of force longer fights with all of these multiple slows as well, then you can proc like a lot of cheap shots in a fight. Remember that it doesn't have a cooldown. You don't have to be out of combat for the cooldown, right? With things like Hail of Blades, you have to be out of combat. But cheap shot is on a 4-second cooldown, and you can keep proccing it in combat. So basically, you know, pretty close to the 4-second mark, you're going to get 2 cheap shots off because you get one immediately, 4-second cooldown, then you get another one. So 4 to 5 seconds, you end up getting the cheap shot proc twice. So in a lot of games, when I have that as Nunu, you'll get like 600 damage or something off of that, which is pretty nice for a considering that's only on champions. It doesn't work on monsters, and it's a secondary rune. It's actually pretty good on him. Then Ravenous Hunter, this is one of the most OP runes in the game. Like, just look at the number at the end of the game on this thing. It's usually like 6,000 health healed. Just like absolutely absurd, especially for a secondary rune. So particularly if you get a couple of early ganks off and get this charged up, you get a couple of stacks on that. It can be very, very strong. Now a lot of that, you know, is healing against minions in the, you know, in the jungle and stuff like that. But still, that keeps you healthy. That means that you're going to be full health and ready to gank. And that's another thing that I just mentioned. Like, you know, he not only clears fast, but he's healthy. You know, some champs that clear pretty fast, like Olaf, you know, on their first clear, it can be a little dicey if you have to fight around Scuttle, or if you want to gank or something like that. You can't be rolling up with 50% health because if you get counter ganked, you're going to die. So the fact that he's just basically always at full health and just ready to go at the drop of a hat, ready for a counter gank, ready for any opportunities that open up, is just really strong. Okay, recommended runes. Cinderhulk is pretty much where you want to go. Yes, it does kind of suck early in terms of the value that you get for those stats, but it does help you wave clear a little bit better so that you can get out there and gank more. He is very proficient at ganking. It does scale pretty well over time. He can trigger the little cinder explosion 2 different ways with his snowball and with his Q. That's really handy. So yeah, I like that one. And then the most common item you'll see after that is Dead Man's Plate. The reason for that is it gives you a lot of extra movement speed, which is good for ganks on Nunu, especially if you're using him as a primary engage. It's pretty good, but the combat value on it is actually quite low. It's only, I don't have a tab open with it right now, but it's only like between, I think like 80 and 90% gold efficient. So it really doesn't do a lot, and it doesn't, like, it gives the movement speed, and you get a little bit of damage, like, on your first hit. But other than that, it really doesn't do a lot. So you really want that as like a macro play if you think you're going to have to split some side lanes. You obviously don't want to be like 1v1ing proper split pushers that often unless you're mega fed, so you don't want to be fighting the Jax and the Fiora. But you can still like push a side lane, just get it up, and then rotate back to your team to make a player contest an objective or something like that. So the movement speed is very nice on him. It makes it much more difficult to kite him as well. It's already pretty hard, but like in combat, for example, if you got like, you know, Callista running away from you or something like that, and you hit him with some snowballs with your E and start walking towards him, you know, it'll start charging up again. So it's good. I have been coming to like Thornmail a lot more as the item of choice. There's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, there's just a ton of healing everywhere in the game right now. Conquer is still extremely popular, and it's become very fashionable to run like sustained tanks with Death's Dance and then throwing like a Spirit Visage on it. So I'm looking at Kayn here. I'm looking at Aatrox. Graves is even sometimes getting Death's Dance. There's just a lot of champs that are getting Death's Dance right now that are also taking Conquer and often Ravenous. And just a lot of healing, even if they don't get Spirit Visage. Just a lot of healing to go with that. And then you're seeing a lot of Blade of the Ruined King users too. That's becoming a much more popular item on things like Irelia, and just some of these other champs, Renekton, that historically have used either Black Cleaver or Triforce. They're figuring out that Blade of the Ruined King can be pretty good in a lot of circumstances. That, of course, is going to have more healing. And then you're seeing some Blade of the Ruined King ADCs become pretty popular right now too. Like Vayne is increasing in popularity. Lucian's pretty popular. So there's just a lot of healing, and you're seeing, you know, champions like you, me, are, you know, seeing a big surge in play right now. So there's just a lot of really pesky healing out there, and so the Grievous Wounds is very nice to get on him. And then you also have the attack speed slow, which is very good as well. Obviously against AD carries, but even against other sort of melee champs that want to be attacking a lot, you know, like your Sets, your Jaxes, Graves, stuff like that. Slowing their attack speed with that cold steel is really solid, and it does reflect some damage back, so that is pretty handy. Now, fun fact as well, if you have Ravenous Hunter, that damage reflected back does actually heal you up for a little bit off of that. So, and if you have Conquer, that works too. You don't take Conquer on Nunu, but that is an interaction that's kind of fun that I didn't know about. So it's not going to be a lot, you know. You might hit them with the Thorns damage for like 30 extra. You know, like they attack you for, you know, whatever the number is, 200, 150, and you hit them back for 30. But then you would also heal off of that a little bit. You know, maybe you heal for like 5 or 6. But it does add up. It adds up. So anyways, I like Thornmail a lot there. I just think that it just brings a lot more to the table in terms of like actual combat effectiveness. I mean, just the Grievous Wounds itself is just thousands and thousands of gold value by cutting that healing. So it's a very big deal. So I like that rune a lot. Also has a nice build path. You can get Bramble Vest at 1100, which gives you that Grievous Wound. And you can just sit on the Bramble Vest if you need, like, if you feel like you want a Spirit Visage or something like that. But they have a lot of healing on their team. You can just get Bramble Vest and sit on it for a little bit. Maybe get some Ninja Tabby, and then you can get Spirit Visage off of that. So that's really good. And then, of course, you have the Spirit Visage. Now, Adaptive Helm is something I've been getting more and more lately, and people need to start thinking a lot more critically about Adaptive Helm, because this item is so powerful against a lot of champions that people may not immediately think that it's powerful against. Like, it's obviously going to be good against things like Cassiopeia and Rise, the 20% reduction on repeated magic damage, but there are some things that it's actually quite good against that don't really pop out at people immediately, like Kog'Maw, for example. Kog'Maw's W does magic on-hit damage, and that does get reduced. It does include on-hit effects. So, like, Kog'Maw, it can be very good against him, good against Rumble, Brand, it lists several of them. It does lower Leandri's Torment damage by quite a lot if someone's going for the Leandri's. Teemo, obviously going to be really good. Katarina. Now, keep in mind, this damage reduction is particularly good if they have, like, Grievous Wounds. So for, like, Grievous Wounds kind of help shut down Spirit Visage a lot because it stops your healing. Not all of it, but it knocks out 40% of your healing. If it's Katarina, it knocks out 60% of it. But this is going to give you that extra bit of protection that's not going to be affected by Grievous Wounds. So if they have something that does a lot of repeated damage, and they're going to get a Morellonomicon, which is almost everybody, for the same reason that I was just talking about Thornmail, a lot of champs are getting Morellonomicon just because healing's kind of running rampant in the game right now. But also great against Fiddlesticks, who's really strong. Even good against things like Kaisa, because Kaisa's passive is magic damage. So there's a lot of stuff out there where this is actually quite a bit more useful than people would think. With Syndra, her ultimate, every single ball that comes in counts as a repeated source of damage. So it, you know, crushes Syndra ults. You'd be surprised how much tankier you are with this item versus just anything that's going to do repeated magic damage, including on-hit magic damage and dot effects. So, you know, consider Adaptive Helm a lot more. I know Spirit Visage, that's the marquee item. That looks fun. You do get the really big chomps. The 30% extra healing is a very big deal on Nunu. So, if, you know, if they don't have repeated magic damage. But just consider Adaptive Helm in a lot of situations. I don't particularly like Abyssal Mask. Like, mana is not that much of an issue on Nunu. Because, like, you have the mana item, which helps you out a lot. So you don't need that too much. And you have to be super close to hand out the bonus damage at 325, so they have to be, like, right on top of you, so you're probably only going to affect maybe one champion at a time. So I really don't like Abyssal Mask that much. I think the other two bring better stuff to the table, unless your team has an Ornn. If your team has an Ornn, you need to get Abyssal Mask just because that's an item that Ornn can upgrade. But other than that, probably wouldn't do Abyssal. The other suite of sort of, and I could put Gargoyle of Stoneplate in here too, just kind of efficient items that aren't going to make you as tanky. So most of the time you're going to want one of these, either Dead Man's Thornmail or Spirit Visage Adaptive if you're the primary tank on the team. But if you're really far ahead, or you have allies that are really far ahead, or there's just like a special situation, you can consider these. These are support items, but they are really good on Nunu as well. They're very, very cost efficient. So you can get them, you know, if you need a very quick power spike, or there's someone in particular that you want to help protect. You know, something like a Knight's Vow can be very good. So if your support is, you know, an enchanter like a Yumi or something, they're not going to get a Knight's Vow, but your Vayne's like 4-0. You could consider getting a Knight's Vow, especially if they have like an assassin on their team and you want to help protect them. That's good. Particularly after you have a lot of health, after you have your 2 health items, your Cinderhulk plus Spirit Visage plus Thornmail or something like that, you could consider getting Locket if they have a very big like AoE burst team, a lot of magic damage. That could be pretty good. Ardent Sensor is something a lot of people don't think about on Nunu, but he does have really good AP ratios. It's not a wasted stat. He does have good plus healing and shielding off of his Q, off of his ultimate. And then obviously it's going to buff up your team. How that works with Font of Life, if you put the slow on somebody and they get that little font trigger, when an ally auto attacks them, that counts as a heal from you. So that counts as you healing them for like, you know, 15 health every auto attack. And so that'll put Ardent Sensor on them. So that's how you can use Ardent Sensor on some champions that don't have a heal for other people innate in their kit, but you still like it. There aren't many champs like that, but Nunu is one of them. So you could consider that once again if you have multiple champs on your team that are going to benefit from that. If you have, I don't know, like a Jax on your team and a Vayne, or you know, a Yasuo, or just anything out there that's going to like a lot of auto attacks and damage, it's good. Particularly, Ardent is very good on champions that have Gensus and Hurricane, because each Hurricane Bolt applies the extra on-hit damage from Ardent, and Gensus can trigger it twice on every 3rd hit. So just something to think about out there. It's not something that I get often on Nunu, but it is possible. If you want something cost efficient, you have 1 or 2 like really fed auto attackers that can be solid. Gargoyle Stoneplate is another one, just cheap, very effective. If they have just a bunch of mixed damage and you just want like a super effective item, it's like a 3rd item after you get 2 of these big tank items, just grab you a Gargoyle. I mean, if you get the full 80-80 value out of that, it's like 140 or 150% efficient. And then of course you can, you know, this is great, especially if they have a lot of CC and burst. You can go up, you know, hard engage, soak up all of that CC, trigger your Gargoyle, and just soak a lot of their cooldowns without taking much damage. So it's very good on most supports that are tanks. It's also very good on Nunu. And then finally, I have Ardent Sensor here as sort of a luxury item. Leandries is something that I've been getting sometimes. If I'm just like hyper fed, if I've got like 7 kills or something, you know, by 20 minutes, and I'm just like super fed, and they just, you know, the enemy team's so far behind, they just can't kill me anyways. Sometimes I'll just get a Leandries as like a 2nd item, particularly if like, you know, they only have 1 magic damage source on their team, and, you know, it's like a Ziggs that's 0-6 or something like that. Then maybe I just go ahead and, you know, go for Dead Man's, and then after that, you know, go for Leandries. Leandries is surprisingly really well, because it works really well on Nunu, because he has good AP ratios. Once again, you're really good at doing sustained damage over time, and like 3 of your 4 abilities have a slow on it. So you're going to be getting a lot out of that Leandries burn. It also helps you burn down things like Baron a bit faster with the Leandries. So I think that's a very good snowball item if you're super far ahead, or if your team just really lacks a lot of damage. Like maybe you've got, you know, like a Poppy top lane, and I don't even know, like a Galio middle or something like that, and then bot lane you've got a Leona as your support, and you just like feel like you need a bit more damage. Leandries can be good. So anyways, Nunu, lots of adaptive items, a very adaptive playstyle. You can farm heavy, you can gank heavy, depending on what's going on in the game. Just super, super flexible, very powerful champion, and he just lines up pretty well against most champs out there. Trundle is kind of a hard counter to him, and there are some other obscure counters that are pretty good, like Anivia is really good against him. But Trundle's kind of fallen out of favor, at least in Gold and solo queue a lot after the nerfs. A lot of people just aren't playing him as much anymore. And you match up pretty well against most other junglers. You usually don't like absolutely crush things like Warwick or Graves or whatever, but you can do very well into them. Okay, now we'll speed it up a little bit. Speaking of, I always like to spend a little bit of extra time. Did I not link the Fiddlesticks? Okay, let me grab Fiddle. There it is. I don't know why I didn't link it while I'm here. Come on, there we go. We'll talk about Fiddle here in just a second. I just noticed that link wasn't on there. Okay, Graves. Now, I'm kind of putting Graves here up here as just sort of, he needs to be tier 1. I don't know if in gold he's that high. He's like OP, like picker, ban, and challenger and pro. Um, but he doesn't have a lot of utility, so he can fall behind and feel sort of bad. But nevertheless, he is very strong right now, especially with this like fairly new rune setup that people have been doing over the last month or so. And that is Phase Rush on Graves. So it's a little funky, but the main thing is he just does really well into a lot of other melee junglers, and he's a power farmer and a skirmisher. So you can go over and fight a lot of things like Olaf, like Trundle. You can still go over and fight things like Nunu as well, but a lot of these like physical Rek'Sai, Lee Sin, a lot of these physical damage dealing skirmisher junglers, which are super popular in Challenger, and in the pro scene right now, just stuff that's like super good early games. You can pressure dragons, Rift Heralds, and just kind of snowball the game. He's going to match up very well against that just because he kites so well. Especially with Phase Rush, it's almost impossible to run him down. He gets just a ton of dashes with Quick Draw, and he's going to get this True Grit, which is just an insane amount. This is the second thing that you max. But you can get up to 160 armor. It's just like, what the flip? Like, who came up with that number? Like, that is literally, I don't even know, like 6,000 gold worth of armor. Let me see here. Okay, 5,000 gold worth of armor. But still, like, I guess armor's 20. I don't know why it was 30. Either way, hell of a lot. Hell of a lot of armor. So it's like 3,200. Yeah, there we go. I put an extra 0 in there. It's a lot. Okay, a lot of armor. And so that allows him to match up really well with a lot of other champions. And he does scale really well. I mean, he's basically like a bruiser 80 carry. He's like the 80 carry that a lot of 80 carries wish they could be, right? Because he doesn't get busted up by assassins very easily. He can kite very well, and he still does a hell of a lot of range damage. So he's kind of what an ADC like should be if it was more balanced. I guess Graves is pretty OP, so he's pretty imbalanced. But it should be something like this in the 80 carry role, right? Where you actually don't just completely get blown out by assassins. So he's really good, and he has synergy with a lot of the popular items right now. I will tell you that Black Cleaver is extremely strong on him because each one of your little shotgun pellets applies Black Cleaver, even if it hits the same target. It says it right here. So each time you fire, I believe it's 4 pellets that you fire. So if you're point blank on someone and it hits them with all 4 of those pellets, that's 4 stacks of Black Cleaver immediately. So if you just like shoot a Q at somebody, that's going to be 2 stacks, I believe. You hit them once, I guess 1 stack on the way through the first time, you auto attack them, and then if the Q comes back, that's going to be your 6 stacks right there. So either way, he stacks Black Cleaver virtually immediately against people because of how it interacts with his shotgun. Now, that does not work with on-hit effects because Black Cleaver reads anytime you do physical damage. It's not on hit. So that's why Black Cleaver also has a special interaction with Ashe's Q, because the little her little volley where she fires 3 bolts, each bolt counts as an instance of physical damage, but it does not trigger on hits. So it's really weird. Black Cleaver has some strange special cases, and this is one of them. So that's why Black Cleaver is so exceptionally good on Graves. Aside from the fact he likes the stats, right? He likes the health. He likes being able to kite even more with the phage off of Black Cleaver. He just would naturally like the armor shred anyways. So he likes everything about Black Cleaver, but the fact that it has that special interaction with his pellets kind of puts it over the top. So you kind of have to get Black Cleaver. It usually goes Warrior, Black Cleaver. And then after that, you do have some other options. I prefer the Bruiser-ish kind of option, where you'd end up getting something like a Death Stance next. I think Death Stance is just a super strong item on anyone that's going to have resistances. That's going to be pretty strong in the jungle right now. So he also clears really well because his shotgun shells do end up pushing the camps back. So most camps are not going to get to auto-attack you that much. Now, I will say that I don't think his clear is as fast as something like a Nunu or a Fiddlesticks or a Shyvana, but it is pretty fast. It is pretty good. Or Kane. I think I forgot to put Kane on here. I'll mention him in a little bit, because Kane is actually pretty good. I just literally forgot to mention him. Yeah, just really good scaling. Doesn't bring a lot of utility. Smokescreen is good. It's particularly annoying against ranged, 80 carry type of champs. So it's an annoying piece of CC, but it's not as great as most other champs out there that are going to have CC. It's kind of like Soraka's silence. You know, if you do it at the exact right time, it can feel like, oh my god, this is so strong. But a lot of the time, it's just not as good, you know, as like a Nunu root or as a Fiddlesticks fear, or, you know, all of Zach's nonsense that he does. You know, all of these things are just going to have more utility, more CC. So he is good, especially against all AD teams. He can get blasted by magic because his true grit does not give magic resist. So his matchup against Fiddlesticks is probably a little harder if Fiddle gets the jump on you. And then obviously if they're running like some really powerful mages that end up getting fed in the mid lane, that can be kind of a problem. Elise, I think, is kind of a tough matchup at higher elos. I'm not 100% about that, but I feel like that would be a tough one for him. He did get some more magic resist per level. I think they used to not give him any magic resist per level, or it used to be like super low, so he does get a bit more out of that. You know, you can itemize into something like a Hex Drinker early on if you need to against, you know, that type of situation, but he is going to be really good. I will say he is kind of nuanced. You have to keep the grit up. I've played him a few times. I didn't do a fantastic job of keeping the grit up, but you got to get used to him, and you carry this grit from champion to champ, or from like camp to camp, and you just always want to make sure you're auto-attacking something within, I think it's, is it 5 seconds it lasts, or 8? Stacking up to 8 times grants this. 0.5, reloading. 4 seconds. Okay, so even less. So yeah, you really have to stay on it, and you kind of got to get your timing down, like, very well if you want this for Scuttle, right? So you have to be, like, at that Scuttle, like, right when it spawns so that you have full grit and you can fight off of that. So it takes a little bit of practice, a little bit of timing, kiting camps in the proper direction, you know, learning exact timing so that you kill, you know, your blue buff or your red buff or whatever. I guess blue buff is a lot easier to get to Scuttle than red buff is on time. I don't think you can do it red side without dropping your grit. I guess you can walk up and dash through the wall. So if you plan correctly, you can kill red and then dash over like the Baron wall or the Dragon wall or wherever you're trying to get the Scuttle. And that resets the timer to an additional 4 seconds. So it's, you have to be a Graves player. You have to practice him a lot. You have to play him a lot in order for him to be really efficient. But he can be very strong. And I mean, that's kind of reflected in his win rate too, right? Like, he doesn't have the greatest win rate in gold. It's only 51%. Although every tier list is going to say he's OP, and for good reason. I mean, especially in Challenger and Pro, he's ultra strong. But a lot of people just don't hold that grit very well, myself included. You just got to put the time into him and just get used to trying to hold that grit up. But particularly, like I said, against things like Olaf, Kane, Trundle, things like that, then he's gonna be very good. So definitely think about Graves before they nerf him. They are gonna nerf him within the next couple of patches. I'll guarantee it. Okay. Just Phase Rush, Nimbus Cloak, just this combo right here is just going to allow you to just kite all over people constantly. Then Absolute Focus, especially once you get Phage, it's just going to be kiting for days. Water Walking, Triumph, Alacrity. And then just Warrior, Black Cleaver, Death's Dance. You can go either Phantom Dancer or Maul Malmortius, or Edge of Night is a pretty good utility item too. Sometimes people go for like the Dustblade, Ghostblade, Umbral Glaive, you know, stuff like that. I don't really like the lethality. I mean, if you're completely busting people up in the early game, the Ghostblade is very nice. That's another kiting tool you can use. So if you're like super far ahead, you know, maybe Ghostblade early on is good, but Cleaver just does so much work, and so does Death's Dance. But it's up to you. You know, really smart junglers do it both ways depending on how the game's going. So he does have some flexibility in his itemization. Okay. Fiddlesticks. Now, Fiddlesticks has been rising up a lot. People are just learning how to play him a little bit better. They're optimizing him, and I think the meta is shaping up very well for him right now. It is nice to have a good AP option in the jungle. I think Nunu, if you run Leandries, can actually put out more AP damage than people think. So I think Nunu can fulfill that role. But Fiddlesticks is just a beast right now, and I've played against some really good Fiddlesticks, and I've tried him out a few times. I'm probably going to play him some more on the stream, so come by check it out if you want to see that. But he's really solid. Like, and the key I think that people have sort of been optimizing about Fiddlesticks is his multi-camp farming. Like, he can actually farm, even like level 1, he can farm Raptors plus Red at the same time. Then he can walk up and farm Blue plus Gromp at the same time. Because he has this AoE, his channel is AoE now. So does a lot of damage. I think they buffed this fairly recently too. They might have increased either the damage or the healing on it or something. So he has actually been buffed. It's not just that people didn't know about him. I think. Minion healing increased to 25% from 15%. Okay, so it says that's undocumented. But yeah, so you get a little bit of extra healing. Now that's lane minions. That's not monsters. So that's a little bit better for like, I mean, that's better on ganks because you're just going to pick up, you know, you're just going to be channeling on some minions anyway. So that's some extra healing for the gank as well, which is nice. Your Reap got a little bit of extra damage. I could have sworn, okay, yeah, here it is, 10-7. The base damage was increased by 20 early on, which is huge. And the health ratio at later ranks was increased. So a little bit early on does add up. So he has been buffed a couple of times. But the biggest thing is just kind of the evolution of the multi-camp clear at the same time. So that just allows him to farm super fast, super safe. Now, if he gets invaded, it can be a problem. He does have surprisingly kind of high base health. He has more than Nunu, which kind of makes you scratch your head a little bit. But he does have more base health than Nunu does. So he can probably get away from a lot of ganks because he's going to be sitting at basically full health the whole time. But yeah, it's just the fact that he can go through and just power farm the jungle super fast. He's also great at taking single target camps with the W, so he can take dragons pretty quickly. Maybe not as fast as like a Shyvana, but he's probably pretty close to like a Nunu or something. He's pretty fast, you know, maybe a 4 out of 5 on Dragon Clear. Very, very good. And another thing is this Harmless Scarecrow is actually extremely good. Early on. It doesn't tell you, does it tell you what the timer is on it? It doesn't tell you right here on the wiki notes, I don't think, what the timer is, but this thing lasts for quite a long time, and it's on a very short cooldown. It feels like you get this up every 2 minutes or less early on, which is a big deal. I mean, this is basically like getting a free pink ward that just might, you know, freak out your opponent every now and then. Now, it doesn't detect the entire time, but from level 6 onward, yeah, it gives you basically 6 seconds. So it's like free control wards in your trinket slot, and it's on a much, much lower cooldown than the traditional warding trinket. And if you get, and it, you know, it has the ability to freak people out. They don't know where you are, you know, and things like that. And if you take Ingenious Hunter, which is something that I recommend that a lot of Fiddlesticks are doing, that actually lowers the cooldown on this. So you get even more control wards. So you can buy normal control wards, and you get Harmless Scarecrow control wards. And there's no limit to how many of these you can have on the map at one time. You can only hold up to 2 in your inventory, but this gives you a ton of extra vision control, which is huge, huge. They've taken away vision control from so many junglers, and Fiddlesticks is finally one that actually has super good vision control. And guess what? That works so well with his kit, because whenever you're able to lock out their vision, you're able to have down, you know, multiple effective control wards all over the map at the same time. Then the Crow Storm is just going to be absolutely devastating whenever you land it. So great vision control, great ward clearing, and camp clearing. I think those are the two biggest evolutions to why his win rate has shot up. Because when he first got relaunched, I think he was like in the mid 40s win rate. It was really low, but now he's much, much higher. And then he's pretty much the same as you would think, right? He's got the Terrify, the Point Click Fear. You do a little bit of damage on this. It does a little bit less fear duration than it used to in recent times. It used to be 3 seconds back in like Season 3. That was obnoxious. Fiddle support with a 3-second fear. But it's a little bit lower. It used to be 225 before the rework, but it's still a really long piece of CC. And it actually does a little bit of damage now, which is nice. 10% of the target's current health when you cast it on them. If they've already been feared, then it's 20% of their current health, which is decent. Bountiful Harvest, obviously going to do just a ton of damage and heals you for a very large percentage as well. So the total amount is 360 damage plus 22% of the missing health AoE on multiple targets, and it has a 0.7 AP ratio. And if you, you know, if they don't interrupt it, then it's only on a cooldown for like half the second, or like half of the time, so like a 3-second cooldown. So you can just spam this in fights over and over again, and it's just going to heal you for a tremendous amount as well. So it's just a really, really good ability. It does kind of get a little mana expensive, but super, super strong. Great AoE effect. Um, this is kind of whatever. It's got decent, surprisingly good range on it, 850. Just nice for a little annoying silence just to stop people from flashing or interrupt channels or whatever. It's not usually that big of a deal. This is what people max last, so it's okay. Um, just a nice little piece of extra CC that you can throw into fights. Usually just to keep people from flashing when they're really low after you hit them with the Crow Storm. Then you have the Crow Storm itself, right? You flash over the wall, and this can actually, like, multiple fear, multiple AoE on everybody. Because if someone hasn't seen Fiddlesticks, what's the duration? Added combat for 2.5 seconds, unseen. All enemy units are affected by Dread. Fiddlesticks' next damage ability against people will fear them for this amount. So I think that you have to get multiple people. Like if you ult right on top of multiple people, I think it fears them. But if you walk into them, so if you fear one person with it and you walk into somebody else, you're already counted as being in combat, so it wouldn't fear the second person with your ult. But you could still use your Q to fear them. So you could ult in, you know, on one or two people, get the fear triggered on them, and then maybe one person's out of range right when you start it. Then you can still use Terrify to fear that other person. So it gives you the potential for multiple target fears in team fights later on. I mean, if you get the Dream 5-person ult, obviously it's just going to be insane. And it still does just like extremely high damage. I think this is literally the same ratio that it used to be. So yeah, really good scaling, tons and tons of AP damage, tons and tons of CC, really good wave clear, like some of the best, maybe the best in the jungle right now. I mean, it is up there. It is a very, very good wave clear. Great monster clear. He's not tanky, which is a thing. He does have a lot of effective health. He often builds things like Hourglass. He does have a lot of CC, you know, to deal with people coming at you. But if they do have a Fed Rengar or Kha'Zix that jumps you and just one-shots you before you can even get your fear off, that can be a problem. But still going to be very good. So I recommend Predator on him just because you're already getting Ingenious Hunter the vast majority of the time. I think a lot of people get Ingenious Hunter just for those idols for your passive because it's so strong with the free control wards. And Predator does give him like better ganks, I think. So even if they see you on a ward, if you come rolling up with Predator, a lot of times it's going to be a successful gank because you just walk up, you just press, you know, Terrify on them, and if you have your ult, you just channel your ult on top of them and they're dead most of the time. So very good with Predator. It gets to be a pretty low cooldown if you have Ingenious Hunter with it. Some people do take, I forgot what it is, the Thunderlords, the Lightning one. I always forget the name of that. Up at the top of the Domination tree. So people like that. It does do a little bit more damage. If you're ganking, I guess, all the time, maybe that's a bit more useful. I'll have to try it out. And some people do go Ulti Hunter. I've tried that on him. Obviously, you do have a really high impact ult, which is very good. So it's hard to go wrong, you know, with either Ulti Hunter or Ingenious Hunter. But I do tend to like Ingenious just a little bit more. If you're going Predator, you definitely want Ingenious. If you're going the Lightning one, maybe you can go Ulti Hunter instead. But either way, both of those are good. You want Transcendence. It's hard to get to 40% CDR on him because you want Sork Boots and, you know, just like your Morellonomicon's not going to have CDR on it. A lot of times you want Morellonomicon or at least Oblivion Orb. So it's just hard to get to 40% CDR, but he loves CDR. It's so strong because you have so many powerful abilities that are on pretty long cooldowns, most notably your Terrify and your Crow Storm. So the Transcendence is very nice. And then Nimbus Cloak just because it's an OP rune and you get it on everybody, basically. Okay, and then you just want to go Runic Echo, Sork Boots, at least Oblivion Orb. A lot of people go ahead and complete Morellonomicon just because you're priced into it. I've done the math on stream. I know people have argued with me about it before. I know people argue in, like, with LS, another content creator, about this, the Leandries versus Morellonomicon. But the truth of the matter is, most of the time, once you get Oblivion Orb, you're priced into Morellonomicon just because it's already basically 100% efficient just to complete it. It's very, very close. You end up paying like 100 or 200 gold for the Grievous Wounds effect, which is an absolute bargain. It's so strong. I was talking about it before, like, a lot of people think, oh, well, I don't need Grievous Wounds. They don't have Mundo on their team. They don't have Srok on their team. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that does so much healing that you don't even think about. Even, like, Ravenous Hunter that I just mentioned before, like 6,000 healing in a game off of just like that little rune on something like a Shyvana, right? Like I run that rune on Shyvana. Ravenous Hunter 6,000 damage or 6,000 healing with Spirit Visage. right? Or like Conquer. You know, Conquer a lot of times is at least in the thousands of healing. So just so many little random things that heal, like Blade of the Ruined King, Conquer, Ravenous Hunter, Death Stance, all of this crap. Just everything has healing on it. So you want as much Grievous Wounds as you can possibly get. This is League of Healing right now. Zanya's is very good. You don't have to rush this item, though. There are some high-end Fiddlesticks players that don't even get this item in a lot of their games. Okay, so it is a very nice item, but it is a cute item. It's good if you are the primary engage. If you need to start a fight with Crowstorm, yes, it's obviously a very good item on him. But I've seen some people getting Proto Belt on him. Proto Belt does give you more burst damage early on. It's cheap. You know, when you have them feared or when you ult in, you just, you know, Proto Belt in their face. You're already getting double pin items anyways with Sork Boots and Oblivion Orb. So that means that your little Proto Belt bolts are going to do more damage because remember, Spell Pin does apply to items. So, you know, that's something definitely worth considering. And then Void Staff just for the extra pin. You just want as much pin as possible. I don't like Leandri. Some people get Leandri's on it. I mean, he does have a few different forms of CC, so it can be good, but I think with Fiddlesticks, you don't want longer fights, you just want to be able to bust them up. But if they do have a lot of tanks, maybe you could consider going that. Okay, so we'll get off of Fiddlesticks, but yeah, he's going to be a really strong one right now. We'll go through the next few a little bit faster here since we only have about 10 minutes left. Okay, so Warwick, going to be a very strong champion in lower elo. Like, some of the biggest stuff that makes him strong is people are always fighting, they're always getting wounded, that gives you a lot of free movement speed around the map. And you do have a lot of disruption, which is just really solid. I mean, that's one thing with Nunu is sometimes if they have a lot of assassins and things like that, it can be hard to really lock them down. You know, if the Talon's just jumping everywhere, like blowing your team up, or like Echo or something is just going off and you just can't like hard CC him so he can't ult, you just have a bunch of slows. That can be annoying. So this is kind of where Warwick comes in. Or if they have a lot of like CC, like they have Vagar and Nivea, or just stuff like that that can stuff Nunu, Warwick could be a decent option there because he can ult through any pieces of CC. It makes him unstoppable. He can follow people and latch on with his Q if you do that properly. It takes a lot of practice to do that, by the way, to like anticipate times. Like the highlight videos make it seem easy, but it's actually pretty difficult. And he's got a lot of healing. The problem with Warwick is his items are kind of expensive to come online. You know, a lot of times he pretty much needs to get Cinderhulk and then Titanic, which is a fantastic combo once you get that, because each whenever you ult somebody, you hit them 9 times, but every third hit triggers on hit one more time, so it's going to triple hit him with Titanic. So that's a lot of extra damage, and especially if you take Ravenous Hunter on him, the Titanic splash damage heals you for a ton, because Ravenous Hunter does apply to items as well, so it's a great tool if you're going to get Blade of the Ruined King, or even something like a Leandri's. If you have Ravenous, all the extra burn damage that you do off of Leandri's will count too, so that's another reason to maybe think about if you run Ravenous Leandri's on Nunu if you're super fed. But anyways, Warwick, I mean, he's just a workhorse, you know. He's tanky, he's disruptive, has a lot of CC, he can run people down, has a ton of healing. Now, more and more people are getting Grievous Wounds because people are figuring out, hey, everything heals for a ton. So that does hurt Warwick a little bit because some of his safety is in his healing. His E does provide some damage resistance, which is nice, but he's good. Just my thing with Warwick is that he is a little bit slower on the farm, especially early on, until you get your Tiamat. And building Tiamat is just a huge liability. Like, it's basically just a farm item. It doesn't help you kill people that much faster. It doesn't give you any extra tankiness. So it's kind of feels bad, like, that you have to buy an item just to farm when stuff like Nunu, Graves, Fiddlesticks, you know, all of that stuff just farms for free and just, like, blasts through the jungle without having to get a special item for it. So that does constrain his build a little bit. It does make him like a little bit slower. His movement speed is also kind of slow if there's not a blood trail. So if you're just walking around and people aren't dying left, right, and center in a gold game, which is rare but does happen, then, you know, he's only got 335 movement speed versus like Nunu, you know, it's just rolling around with that snowball all over the jungle. Fiddlesticks is killing the camps in like 1 second. Graves is like eating over walls. So it just feels like he just doesn't get around the jungle as well as some of the other champs, but he is still going to be very strong. So I think that Warwick is very good, and that's reflected in his win rate. I think he's like pretty much always near the top of the win rates. Where did I exit out of that? Oh, here it is. Okay. Yeah, so he's always floating around the top 5. So he's a good, solid pick. And I think he actually could be good all the way up through Diamond. I think there are even some Challenger Warwick players because he does have some real outplay potential with his Q and his R. So he's definitely going to be on the strong side. And then we have Wukong. Now, Wukong still has a high win rate. I'm going to have to test him out. I haven't played him yet in the jungle. I've played against him a couple of times. I'll have to see how his clear is. So this is just like really tentative, but I feel like he does clear pretty fast. Does it tell me like what his average CS is per game? It probably does somewhere around here. But I'm not seeing it. But it feels like if he can farm really well, then he does fit the mold of kind of a lot of the stuff that I think is really good right now. Just like tanky, disruptive, bruiser type of champs. He does bring a lot to the table. Obviously, he has his ult, which you can proc twice now, which is just insane. So that's a lot of CC. He stacks up Black Cleaver on everyone super well, although a lot of people aren't taking Cleaver, which I find very odd because his ult does stack Cleaver. It's very similar to Graves. It pretty much just insta-stacks Cleaver on everybody, so that seems really weird to me. I'd have to carefully review that. But it looks like more people are going towards Trinity. I mean, that's a greedy item, I guess, for just like one-shotting people more than Cleaver, but it feels like shredding 30% or 24% or whatever armor for your team might outweigh that, but I don't know. Either way, Warrior plus Cleaver or Trinity and then Death's Dance, that's the combo. You know, you're seeing that on Graves, you're seeing that on Kayn. Once again, I forgot to mention Kayn. I think Kayn would either be lower tier 1 or upper tier 2. I'm just gonna put him like lower tier 1 because I think he is really good right now. Okay, so we'll just put that right there. Put a different color on it or something. So yeah, I mean he's good. He's got a lot of disruption. Also, his Q, I mean, it might be because if you're maxing the Q, it says here that the skill priority is E, but this one here says that the skill priority is Q. I think I see most people doing E with it just because you probably need that for your clear. But the Q does shred a lot of armor. I don't remember exactly how much it is, but I feel like it shreds like 25% armor, so maybe that doesn't stack favorably with Black Cleaver. I'm not sure how that interaction works, so he does provide, he's kind of like Jarvan. He has free armor shred on his Q just for reasons. You know, he's got the trifecta going here. I assume he probably goes Ravenous Hunter. Well, this one has him going Nimbus Waterwalking. I guess that's fine. But yeah, when you have the combination of like Conqueror plus Death's Dance, it's just a lot of healing. So a lot of damage. Don't know how fast his clear is, but his team fighting is certainly really good. So I think he's going to be a strong champ still, even though he's been nerfed a few times. Olaf, still going to be really strong, especially if they have a hard CC team, especially if you want to fight early on. After your first clear, you stay like fairly healthy. And he just does a ton of damage. I mean, whether you take Warrior or Cinderhulk or whatever, the number 1 jungler right now, NNA, Winston, I think, runs Olaf a ton. And he's very good. Even though he's supposed to be bad in a Graves, I mean, Winston might just ban Graves every game. It's probably a pretty good idea. But, Olaf is really strong. I mean, he's tanky, he's very difficult to kill, and he puts out some of the most, like, one-on-one damage out there of any of these champions. Like, he just lays down the damage hard, and he can't be seed, right? So he can run, you know, straight through a Fiddlestick Sphere, straight through, you know, a Veigar Cage, all that stuff. So if you're really proficient on Olaf, he can bust people up and snowball hard, and he clears really fast. The problem, though, is that you do get kind of low on your first clear. If you're clearing like as fast as possible, you can greed out. You can heal back up pretty fast though too. If you activate your W and then smite, you know, you can heal back up. But if they catch you out, if they invade you while you're trying to like, because you clear faster when you're lower because you get more attack speed off of your passive. So you're always kind of like, you know, on the edge of how low do I want to go? Like how fast do I want to clear? Which is a fun interaction. But either way, I think he is going to be really strong. So, especially if you have anything that gives movement speed on your team, you got a Yuumi on your team, you got Lulu, or anyone that's running a Shirelias, like a Rakan with a Shirelias or something like that, he's going to be very strong. Now, a lot of people have kind of moved away from going from the Righteous Glory for him. I'm not really sure what's up with that, but like most people, I think just with Nimbus Cloak is helping him out a lot as well. Now, some people I think are even trying phase rush on him. I haven't looked at that yet. That could actually be really good. Let me just check that out real quick. I know we're pretty much out of time, but I'm trying not to stop and go through too many of these things. But people running phase rush on everything else, so Conquer is just so good on him, though, because you really, like, that healing and the way that it stacks with your W, like, amping it up, is just very strong. Yeah, Cleaver. I really like Death's Dance a lot on him. I mean, maybe I'm just overdoing it with the healing, but especially because Death's Dance also counts true damage that you do off of your E. It feels really good on him. And I guess they like Sterix a little more. Which is okay. Let me see what the top end people are. Yeah, it looks like it's pretty much all Conquer, Nimbus Cloak. I mean, Nimbus Cloak does give you a nice little boost of speed there. It doesn't look like anyone's doing Nimbus on him, really. And Conquer's probably just too good. But, anyways, he's going to be a really strong pick. Next pick, Trundle. I think Trundle is still pretty good. They've nerfed him. I have Trundle a little bit lower just because I think he's primarily a counter pick now. Like, you can blind pick him, but he's kind of got Warwick-itis as well, where his multi-target clear is pretty weak. And it really, like, wants you to get a Tiamat. A lot of top-end Trundles do not get that. They just go, like, full, like, utility tank items. Speaking of which, random aside, I tried out Frozen Heart on Nunu, and I don't like it at all. I really think that you need health items on him. Like, there's just so much scaling with health. Your ult scales with health. Your Cinder Hulk scales. Your Q scales with health. You just need health on Nunu. But on something like Trundle, I mentioned that because on Trundle, I've seen some more people getting Frozen Heart on him against heavy AD comps, and it seems pretty good. Like, a lot of people are picking that up. Because Trundle doesn't have any health scaling on his abilities. He does get Cinder Hulk, but you're not losing as much opportunity cost by getting Frozen Heart on Trundle. So usually on him, the big ticket item is Knight's Vow. The reason why that's so good is it does usual Knight's Vow stuff, provides protection for, one of your carries, and it's just really cost efficient. But you get all of the healing off of your W, heals you for a ton of extra. So whenever your AD carry or whoever you have it attached to does damage, it heals you for 12% of the damage they do. And then when you're on your corrupted soil or whatever, that's an additional 25% healing. And if you get Spirit Visage on top of that as like your third item, then that's an extra 30% on top of that healing. So that can actually heal you for quite a ton when you get Knight's Vow. So that's why a lot of top-end Trundles have been running Knight's Vow lately because of its synergy with the W. It's very, very good, super cost-efficient. So a lot of people are just going for stuff like Knight's Vow, Zeke's. If you don't have a support that's going to get Zeke's, that can be a really cost-efficient item. Gives you more sticking power as well. Some people have been trying Phase Rush on Trundle because, they just want to be able to stick better. He's already pretty sticky. Like, his Q already applies a small slow. He's got his W. But if you have the Zeke's on him, that can be very powerful because then you get 10 seconds of, like, a 3-second, 40% slow on him. So that's a really powerful interaction, in addition to giving a bunch of damage to your AD carry. So Zeke's is actually surprisingly really, really good on him as well. And then I still like Press the Attack. It just gives your entire team 12% extra damage. And really, he's the type of champ where you focus out on their frontliner, and it just allows your AD carry to actually kill a tank, your frontliner, right? Because you curse them, you trigger Press the Attack on them, and then, you buff them up with like a Zeke's or something like that. And then your AD carry can actually kill the Shyvana, or they can actually kill the Nunu, or whatever. So he does have great matchups into Nunu, pretty good into Warwick, I think. But, his matchup against Graves can be kind of tough. It's just rough because you have to invest, once again, or you're incentivized to invest in the Tiamat and the Titanic Hydra, which can be good. If you don't do that, if you go for kind of the Challenger build, then your wave clear is going to be really slow. So it's kind of a trade-off. Now, in Challenger, you don't need to be able to clear a lot as much because, they're going to be catching the side waves. You don't have to manage side waves. The carries actually understand how wave management works. They're going to push before objectives, all that kind of stuff. And they're going to be farming up your jungle. Once the lanes break, your top laner, your mid laner, your AD carry, everyone's going to be robbing your jungle. So it doesn't even matter if you have Tiamat in the late game or not. And you want to be giving them your jungle if you're a challenger, right? Versus in solo queue, a lot of times, you might need a little bit more of your jungle farm, right? Especially if you're kind of far ahead. So Anyways, that's just kind of the trade-off where I think in lower elo you might be more tempted to get Tiamat on him just so you have better wave clear. But if you do that, you're potentially not going to have as much utility for your team, or you're going to be squishy. Versus a lot of these other champs, the Nunus, the Graves, the Fiddlesticks, all that stuff, they don't have to have that special item to clear. So that's important to note. Kayn is very good, especially Red Kayn. We're definitely out of time now, so I'll just fly through these really quick. I think, did I mention Kayn or did I skip him? Either way, Kayn is good if you can get Red transformed in a reasonable amount of time, like 10 to 15 minutes. Red Kayn, has the same kind of setup: Black Cleaver, Death Stance, usually Spirit Visage after that. Just massive CC, just CC, disruptive, sustained damage, destroyer. I mean, he's just really good. Farms super well. The problem is if you don't get transformed early enough, it can feel really bad, and you're pretty worthless early on. If you do sneak, if you have like really good lanes for ganking and you can get some kills, you've got like a Draven and a Leona bot lane against like a Jinx, I don't know, something else immobile and squishy, Jinx, Sona or something like that. Yeah, maybe you can gank that and get a million kills and get your stacks. So Kayn is really good. They did nerf him this patch. I thought that was a premature nerf. It's like he's good, but he's not like that over the top. Just let the gold people have their day, man. He's already like not played in Challenger because he's unreliable, but anyways, he's all right. Trundle, Shyvana. Now, I didn't update the Shyvana page. I need to change this a little bit. Yeah. So Shyvana is kind of the biggest one that I sort of 180'd on in the last little bit. I still do have a positive win rate, and she's my most played. I've got like a 53 or 54% win rate, something like that. But she just gets kited really, like she just can't gank early at all. She does farm super well, but you can get kited even later on in the game if they have a lot of ranged champs. It can feel kind of bad to get kited. I have tried it with the Frozen Mallet build. It feels pretty bad. I still think that like something with Blade of the Ruined King is probably better, like Blade of the Ruined King into Spirit Visage, just skipping your upgrade. Now, one thing that I have found that helps a lot on her is taking Ignite instead of Flash. That gives you a lot more kill pressure if you do actually show up. You may not have any CC, but you've got raw damage with your Ignite, and then you take Press the Attack also. And so you can, if you trigger Press the Attack and then get the Ignite on him, I believe PTA includes true damage. I'm not 100% about that. But either way, it gives you a little bit of spike damage. So especially if you counter gank, if you show up when people are already like 50% health, you can turn it around. So that does help our early game out a little bit. And you can actually trade. If you're fighting around Scuttle, you can catch people off guard if they're not paying attention. Because you're going to come in almost full health. And, if they roll up with 50% health or something like that, and they're just like, oh, it's a Shyvana, she can't fight. And then all of a sudden you roll up, you trigger Press the Attack and Ignite them, then you kill them, right? And they're like, whoa, So it does give you a little bit more dueling potential. You kind of get to cheat some more damage in with Ignite. Ignite does a ton of damage, by the way. It's like a really OP summoner. So that's nice. And you don't miss it that much because you can get out of situations later, right? Like you have your ult, you're trying to counter jungle, you're trying to sneak a dragon or something, they roll up, you took a risk, it didn't work out. You can still ult and run away. So I mean, it's like, what are you gonna do with Flash? Mostly, like you're gonna flash in and like auto attack somebody or something. I don't know. Flash is obviously a good rune, but I think that she is a champion that can run Ignite, much in the same way that Shaco does, to get a little bit of extra kill pressure in the early game. So that has really helped out a ton. And then I still think that the AD Bruiser Shyvana, there's some combination of items that I think is really strong on her, potentially. I actually tried a Cinderhulk into Titanic on her, and it wasn't that bad because your Q, when you auto-attack and then use your Q to reset to auto again, that's a triple hit on Titanic and just does a massive amount of AoE damage in fights. And especially if you have Ravenous Hunter and if you take Conquer in that situation, if you don't think you're going to fight early, you don't need PTA, that could actually be a ton of healing. Like, an actual ton of healing. Because you do trigger Conquer virtually instantly in fights because every single one of your abilities does damage. So you just jump on top of them, just roll your hand across the keyboard, there's Conquer. So I think she has a lot of potential there, and that did feel really good. The biggest thing is people just have like such a weak mental and they don't understand like how farm junglers work, and they're just going to be spam pinging you if they're losing lane. Even if you're up like 100 CS, which is super common. On Shyvana, you're up 2 levels, 100 CS. I had someone like saying to report me after a game one time when I literally secured all 4 dragons, soul, 2 rifts. I think we got 1 or 2 barons. I was 6, 1, and 6, and I was up like 120 CS on the enemy jungler. Still wanted me to report him because the ADC in the bot lane because he went 0-6 in lane, like hard fed. I wouldn't have been able to gank it anyways with most junglers, and he was just pissed off that I didn't camp his lane. You know, hashtag jungle life, right? But anyways, but that is a problem. I mean, people will give up. They will start trolling. They will come in and start invading and taking your jungle and crap like that. If they get crushed in lane and they're expecting you to bail them out. Now, is that stupid? Yes. But is it a reality? Yes, it absolutely is. So, you know, that's just one of those things where you're just going to give up a certain percentage of games. You know, maybe it's not a lot. Maybe that only happens in like 3% of games, but still, that's going to drag down your win rate about 3%, right? When people start trolling and getting frustrated because you're a hard farm jungler, and you just don't have the same kind of gank pressure as other lanes do, right? You're much more about, okay, they just ganked bottom, well, I'm going to take their whole jungle in Rift Herald, right? And that's, you know, on paper, that might be worth it. If they get 1 kill bottom, that's generating 450 gold value. If I get 4 camps top, that's also another, you know, close to 400 gold value plus Rift Herald, you know, and getting 2 plates off a Rift or something like that. You know, I'm probably getting at least 1,000 gold value and going up a level on the enemy jungle. That's a good deal, right? But people just don't see it that way. Everyone's so selfish. They're like, me. If I'm not like having the best game ever, this game sucks. This jungler sucks, that type of thing. So, anyways, that play style is good. It's effective. It's powerful in gold, but it's really hard on the mental of a lot of gold people. So that can sort of be a problem. And we're pretty much out of time there. I don't want to go much longer than 110. I will say Zach is very good. He's a powerful champ. His ganks early can be okay, but it's surprisingly short range on his E until you get it, you know, until you're at least level 5. And even then, they really have to be pushing into your lane in order to get high quality ganks. You can dive them as well with Zach. Like, he is good, but it's not just like you just run up the lane with a snowball like Nunu and just, you know, kill him. Right, it takes a little bit more planning, a little bit more cooperation and positioning, and you have to actually hit a skill shot. You have to actually land your E on somebody, which, you know, if they have wards where you are, or if they just have like decent reflexes and flash it or dash or whatever, it can be harder to land it. But if the game goes late, he is very, very difficult to stop. He just can dive right on that back line and be a super disruptive pest. So, anyways, I think that he can be very good, but he's a little bit weaker early. And then Master Yi, I went ahead and put down here. He is still very strong if he goes off. Like, his best case scenarios, he's OP, but it feels like there are like more and more tanks and more CC like that's becoming popular that can deal with him. That can either beat him up early like Graves, or that can just like CC him to death like Fiddlesticks, Warwick, potentially Wukong. Olaf can go over and beat him up early. So he can still be really good if he gets out of control. But there are more and more answers that are becoming meta against him right now. So he is still strong, but not quite as strong as he used to be. And then if you're really good on Kha'Zix or Rengar, both of these are very efficient, but you have to practice them a lot. You have to be very good, because in certain matchups, it can be rough against tanks. I think Kha'Zix actually has a pretty good win rate against my Nunu, ironically enough. But you just have to really, really be good on those. Evelyn can kind of fit into that camp as well, but I would probably prefer Kha'Zix and Rengar. Shaco's another one just like that. Shaco can be very good, but he falls off pretty hard late game. And you just got to know all the tricks with Shaco. You got to be able to go invulnerable at the right time with your clone, and then fake people out with it, and get to the back line and get away. Like, good Shacos can be very good and like very disruptive, but he takes a lot of practice, and there's a lot of ifs if you're playing Shaco. And then Ivern sort of is another one who is very strong. He's making a comeback, especially in like Diamond Plus. He has a really high win rate. I think his win rate has fallen off a bit this patch. I thought he was like top 3 or something last patch, or maybe the patch before that. But very good clear and ganking early, actually. He does get a little bit low on his first clear, but like while you're waiting on your camps, you can just like non-stop gank over and over and over again. And so that can be very effective if you have gankable lanes. Like, as soon as you take your first back and get mobility boots, it's just sort of off to the races, ganking every lane. So he is good. He does add a lot of utility, but he doesn't take objectives fast at all. He can't push side waves at all. And he really doesn't do that much damage, right? You're kind of beholden to your team to actually have a bit of a brain. But if they do, then he can be really good. I think if you just want to play something supportive in the jungle, I would play probably either Nunu or Trundle, because both of them can get a lot of support items and be very effective. But they're also tanky and just bring a little bit, are a little bit more self-sufficient. And then finally, Lee Sin. I do think that Lee is really good if you're good on him. He has lots of different build paths. He has great ganking early. But he does fall off later if you can't close the game. So Lee can be a beast. He can be really good, but you got to practice him a lot. But he's definitely someone to keep an eye on. Final couple here. Udyr is actually, I think, a lot stronger than people think he is. He just kind of has Shyvana-itis, where people are just going to AFK or troll you because you're split pushing. But I do think that is a very viable, strong strategy right now in solo queue. The thing about Udyr that's different from Shyvana is you can actually chain gank really, really well early on. And so if you just, and he does power farm very well. He can't do like, you just basically skip the raptors, just don't ever kill the raptors a lot of the times. But you just skip the raptors, then you just kill everything else, kill everyone. I mean, you can do Tiamat on him. It's not the greatest. You can do Cinder Hulk on him. The dilemma is if you do Cinder Hulk, yes, it does give you better wave clear, and it does help you scale a little bit better, but you give up a lot of your early game, and he has very strong scaling in the early game with Warrior, because his Tiger Stance, I think, has like 180% of your bonus AD ratio. It's just something insane. So if you go for Warrior early, then that does allow you to just double down on the ganks, double down on the skirmishing, you know, just go beat the crap out of the enemy jungler a lot of times, go gank all the lanes, beat them up, but you're never going to be able to clear raptors. So it also takes things like dragons and Rift Herald a lot faster. So it's kind of up to you. A lot of the, you know, high diamond Udyrs will go for the most common build I saw was like Cinder Hulk and Asterix, just for kind of a tankier build. But I think, you know, in solo queue, honestly, I would just double down on the skirmishing and split push. Just go Warrior, Trinity, and just get to work. Just beat people down, go take those towers. That's what I think is your first couple of items. And then after that, maybe Asterix, maybe you can get tankier after that. But I would just ultra go into the skirmishing splitting mode, especially if you're ahead. And just hope that your team doesn't have a mental collapse while you're doing that. So it's like Shyvana, you're probably going to be up a couple of levels. You're probably going to be up, you know, 80 CS, 100 CS on the enemy jungler. Just if your team is constantly wanting to group up, especially if you're behind. He feels so bad because your team just really wants to group up when you're behind, but he's so bad grouping. Like, he's one of the worst. He's just absolutely terrible. Unless your team's really far ahead, which if they want to group a lot, they're usually not. And everyone in gold wants to group. They're like, hey, we're down 10 kills and 3 towers. Let's group up and do a 5v5. Let's just do it. You know, when the enemy team has like, you know, something like Rumble, Jarvan, Brand, you know, all of this stuff on their team, and it's like you've got Udyr and like Fiora or something. Everybody wants to group. That's really frustrating. But anyways, because a lot of times the best thing to do if you're behind is to split push, is to put pressure on side lanes and don't let them group. Because if they're really far ahead, they're probably going to beat you in a team fight, especially if you're playing Udyr. So you should be split pushing. But everyone thinks you're a troll, and it'll just be like, 9x report this guy. He's split pushing while they were, you know, forcing team fights on us. So anyways, that's the danger of Udyr. His strategy can be strong. It can be powerful. It's really bad when you're behind. You can get back into the game through split pushing, but your team will often have a stroke while you're doing that. So that's why I have him in honorable mentions. But I think if you're really good on him, if your team doesn't have a meltdown, then he can be pretty good. Okay, but that's it. We gotta stop it here. We don't want to go too far in there, but anyways, okay, that's gonna be it. Jungle's pretty diverse right now. I think there are quite a few like really good things that are in the jungle, I do think that things like Nunu, Graves, Fiddle, Warwick, Wukong, I do think these are just a touch above some of the kind of the lower ones, but there are a lot of things that are really, really good. So I think the jungle is actually in a pretty good place right now, as much as you know, people like to complain about it. I think it's actually pretty good. But anyways, I mean, just look at this. Nothing's at 53%. You got some stuff that's pushing it. It's like 52 and some change. And so there's a lot of things that are like between 48 and 52. There are definitely some things down here in the gutter, but let's be real, most of these things shouldn't be in the jungle anyways that are way down here. But like the traditional jungle champs, most of them are between 48 and 52, and that's, you know, that's pretty good. Okay, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and I'll see you next time.